Hello friends, I'm Rosa. Welcome to the channel. So a couple of weeks ago I did a video like this but on witchy books, and I thought since it seemed like you guys liked the video that we could do the same kind of format but with different supernatural beings, if you will. So I have a thing for vampires, like I'm not gonna lie. It's not related to Twilight. I like vampires before Twilight. But I have a thing for vampires, and I'm pretty sure that's not, like, having actually had issues finding books with vampires that weren't or didn't seem like they were terrible was a bit of a struggle. So this was a hard one to do research for, I'm not gonna lie. But I did my best. I have a total of, I think, about like 12, 13 books. 14. I just counted. 14 books that we're going to talk about. I only own a very small portion of them, and some of them you might have heard about before, some of them you might not have heard about before, but the common theme here is that I haven't read them and I want to. So we're going to start out with the books that I do own, and also if you want to check out any of them, I will make sure to link to them all in the description box so you can find links to both Book Depository but also Amazon if you want to check out the synopses. I'm just going to quickly go through them, do my best at summarizing them without having read them, which is always a bad idea for me, but hey, I'm gonna do my best, so let's just give it a go. So let's start out with a young adult, which has been out for a little while. I think it's implied that everything here is going to be fantasy, right? Fantasy in one way or another. It might be contemporary, urban, or just regular fantasy, but everything that we're talking about today is fantasy. So we're starting out with The Beautiful by Renee Ahdieh. So this takes place in 1872 New Orleans? I'm not really sure how to pronounce that. Anyway, we follow a girl whose name is Celine, and she has landed in New Orleans because she has been forced to flee from Paris. So as she's there, murders start to happen in the city. She also meets this mysterious guy. His name is Sebastian. He happens to be a leader of some kind of group, and a third victim of these serial killings happens to just be found in his lair. Our lead girl is she's very attracted to this guy, but at the same time she's like, this is kind of weird. I don't trust this. Is he a killer? You know, that sort of thing, as you do with, yeah, very normal. And as it turns out, after a few more murders, it just so happens that our lead girl might find herself in the middle of like an age-old, like a very old war rivalry between two different groups. And these two different groups are basically like creatures of the night. Like, all of the members in the groups are creatures of the night. Some of them are vampires. That's all I know. So this is a series. It's the first one, I think, out of 4 or 5. And I am super excited to get into this. I have not read anything by Renee Ahdieh, but I saw that she'd written a vampire book and I was like, I'm taking it. So yeah, that is The Beautiful. Then next up we have Adult, which is adult. It's an adult romance. Okay, fantasy romance. It's King of Battle and Blood by Scarlett St. Clair. This is also the first one in the series. I'm not sure how many books it's going to be, but possibly 3. And in this, we follow a young woman who has basically, she's been sent off to marry the Vampire King, and she's supposed to kill him on their wedding day, but unfortunately for her, or is it fortunately, not really sure, things don't really go as she planned. And so she has to live with the Vampire King after this assassination attempt. That's probably gonna go great. But as they start living together and, you know, get to know each other a little bit better, she actually finds out that he's not as awful as she thought him to be. I have not read anything by Scarlett St. Clair either before, but I'm very excited to read this. I don't even own, what's it called? The Hades and Persephone retelling? What is it called? Touch of Chaos? Touch of Darkness? Touch of Darkness. Yes, I don't even own it, I think. I jumped straight to this series because it has vampires. You can call me a fan. Yes, of vampires. I haven't read anything by her, so. Then we have a newer release, and that is House of Hunger by Alexis Henderson. This is supposed to be adult horror and also with vampires. I feel like I don't need to say that for the rest of the video. I think we get it by now. This book is about a struggling girl who takes off to House of Hunger to become a bloodsmaid. She doesn't really know what a bloodsmaid is, but I think we can put 2 and 2 together knowing what we know. And at this House of Hunger, there's also a countess who is a little bit intimidating and at the same time also very charismatic, likable, and magnetic, if you will. As our lead girl is spending time at House of Hunger, girls start to go missing, and it turns out that our lead girl, really has to find her place in House of Hunger, learn to follow the rules, otherwise she might be next. As far as I know, this is also supposed to be sapphic. So that is the thing. I'm pretty sure because it also says right up here, a bloody sapphic fever dream of a novel. So something worth mentioning if you're looking for sapphic horror with vampires, you know, I got you covered. And then the last book that I own is one that I 100% will not be able to keep my hold of because I only own it in this, like, as this copy, which is basically 3 copies, or 3 books, but it's Salem's Lot that we're talking about today by Stephen King. This is very heavy, but it's adult horror, and I don't know much about Salem's Lot, to be honest. I don't think I want to know much about Salem's Lot. All I know is that we follow a man and a boy who have fled, I think, the town of Salem, but have to return to the town to face a big evil, and that's all I know. I'm guessing the evil is the vampires, but really, who am I to tell, you know? Can only guess here. But yeah, this is very heavy. I'm gonna put it down just because I don't think I can, well, can I read it in this one, to be honest? It's right here, so I mean, it should be possible, but letters aren't too small either. I think we can do that. Oh, it's written like, oh, that's cool. I had no idea. Okay, without spoiling anything, so the chapters, I just found out, are written like 4 p.m. and then the next one is 5 p.m., 6 p.m. That is pretty cool. I like when books do something a little bit different than just following like regular chapters, so that is a nice surprise. Or at least it is in this chapter book. Per point of view, maybe we'll go back to that part of the book. Are those test results? Okay, I'm gonna end up getting spoiled. Let's put her away. Bye. As for the rest of the books, some I own on Kindle and some I just don't own yet but really want to. So the first book is one that kind of reminds me of another book that I've also put on the list, but I'm going to talk about it anyway, and that is Crave by Tracy Wolff. It's about a girl who ends up at an academy where I'm guessing there are supernatural creatures. I don't know if it's just a vampire academy. Was that too on the nose? But it's an academy either way, and she doesn't really know why she's there, if she's been brought there on purpose. There's a guy who's very mysterious. His name is Jason, and he's a vampire, and he has been taken away from the school at some point, sent out on some kind of mission. I'm not really sure. There's a whole thing going on there, but it's like become a longer series as well. I think it's doing okay, so I think it's gonna be one of those reads that if I ever feel like reading something not necessarily trashy YA, but it does remind me of those like early 10s kind of YA books, at least from the premise of it. So I have it on my Kindle. I'm gonna read it eventually, but I'm not expecting it to be amazing. I'm just expecting it to be like a fun time. And speaking of Vampire Academies, I've also put Vampire Academy on this list because I have not read it and I really want to. We follow 2 girls. One is a mortal vampire, so she dies. You know what mortal means. I don't have to specify that. But she has like special powers. She's also, I think her family is rather, is she a princess or something? I can't remember exactly what her title is, but she's like something like that. We also follow another girl who is both human and vampire, and she has basically been tasked to protect the first girl that I talked about, the vampire. In this world, they're going to a school, an academy for both vampires, but also whatever kind of creature Rose is, they also go to this school, and they are supposed to be protected from these strigoi that are immortal vampires, and they're very dangerous, and a lot of stuff happens at this school as well. I'm not gonna get into it because I don't think it's in the synopsis, but I'm also pretty sure that I'm the last person on the planet who hasn't read this book. Alas, I want to read it. But this is also like young adult fantasy, and I just think it's funny that the two like both are, but I guess like a school for supernatural creatures is not unique. I think we've seen that before, you know? But the Vampire Academy is by, I'm not sure how to pronounce her first name, Rachel Mead. It's just as like Rachel, but with an I instead of an A. And they also wrote Bloodlines, which is also on this list. I put Bloodlines, well, I put both on the list because usually I don't think I would put two books by the same author in one video like this, but I really want to read Vampire Academy. However, I've heard that Bloodlines is actually better, so I have high hopes for it. But in it, we follow a girl who is what they call an alchemist. So she works some kind of magic, and she also works as kind of like a bridge between humans and vampires. And by that I mean they are supposed to protect the secret of vampires and at the same time also protect us humans from being killed. So our lead girl has done something, I'm not sure what, but she's kind of landed in hot waters with the other alchemists and her loyalty is being questioned. And then in the middle of the night, she's torn from her home and ends up in this place where she has to live with a vampire, which is very difficult because she's not supposed to like ally herself with vampires. She's just supposed to be very in the middle between humans and vampires. So her loyalty being questioned, and now she's in this situation. It's not an easy situation to be in. Both Bloodlines and Vampire Academy are in the same universe, and I think it's going to be best to read, or I think it'll be the better choice to read Vampire Academy first. So that is what I'm planning to do, but I'm really looking forward to going through both of the series. And yeah, that is Vampire Academy and also Bloodlines. Next one we're talking about is a duel with the Vampire Lord. Is that what it's called? Vampire Lord? That sounds right. It's by Elisa Kova. And I think we're entering like new adult territory because it's kind of young adult, but there are certain explicit things in it, although not a lot of it. At least if it's anything like the two previous books in this series. So it's a part of the Married to Magic series, but they are companion novels, which means that you don't have to read the first two to be able to read the third one. The first two are A Deal with the Fae King? No. A Deal with the Elf King? What? Wait, what are they called? Oh, A Deal with the Elf King. I got it right. And A Dance with the Fae Prince. And now we have a duel with the Vampire Lord, and the fourth one is going to be a duet with the Siren Duke. Which is pretty funny. I don't think Siren Duke? Can sirens be male? Well, that's interesting. But I don't think we come across a lot of like mermaids and sirens and stuff, so she says having just finished a siren book. Okay, that's fair. So in this book, we follow a girl who works for a master hunter. So there is this thing that the Vampire Lord has to die on the blood moon, and our lead girl, after the vampire actually kills her brother, ends up having to duel him, and she wants to kill him. However, he doesn't want to kill her. He just wants her. So he ends up kidnapping her. She's then taken off to the vampire castle and sworn into this like blood sworn thing to him, which means that she's now completely bound in soul to the Vampire Lord, who's basically her greatest enemy. But as it turns out, he might not be as terrible as she thinks he is. And while spending time at the vampire castle, she also starts to learn that the vampires are actually not the monsters that she first thought they were. And stuff happens after that. So that is a duel with the Vampire Lord. I kind of half enjoy the first two, so I'm looking forward to this one. But the first two weren't amazing, so I'm not having like huge expectations for this one. I think it's just gonna be like a kind of comfortable quick read, you know? Yeah. Next up, we have a graphic novel that is called Fangs. It's by Sarah Anderson, and it's about a vampire and also a werewolf that meet up and start to date, and it's just funny and quirky and cute. I don't know much about it other than that, but I've heard many lovely things about it. I think it's a quick read. I think it's a fun read, so I'm looking forward to getting my hands on Fangs at some point. I've been so close to buying it like 5 times by now. I still don't own it. I think it's mainly got to do with the fact that I can only find it as a hardback, but that said, the hardback is also small and cute and red, and I feel like I need to own it, but I just don't have my hands on it yet. But just a cute graphic novel with a vampire and also a werewolf, so what's not to love about that? And then we're going back in time to 20s something. Can't recall, but we're gonna talk about Magic Bites by, help me out, Ilona? I don't know how to pronounce their first name. Andrews, I think. In this series, we follow Kate Daniels, who is what is her title? She's a mercenary. So in this world, there's been some issues with magic. Something has happened and there's a lot of magical problems that Kate Daniels as a mercenary is often hired to solve. Unfortunately for her, at some point she ends up kind of in the middle of a feud between necromancers who control vampires and also shapeshifters, and Kate Daniels is just kind of in the middle of it. Kate's own guardian has been killed, possibly as a part of this feud, and there's a whole mystery going on. None of the two clans want to admit to killing her guardian, and Kate has a problem to solve. So that is Magic Bites. I kind of have been trying to look into older fantasy as well because I've missed quite a lot, so this is one of those and I'm really looking forward to getting my hands on it at some point. Kate Daniels, at least as far as I could read from the reviews, seems like a super awesome female character, a very strong female character, so we'll see if they're right about it. I'm excited because those are the female kind of characters that I seriously love, like the badasses of the world, you know? Another older vampire book that I was also looking into is Guilty Pleasures, and this one is also a part of a series, what's it called? Anita Blake Vampire Hunter, and the series is by Laurel K. Hamilton. It's from '04, so it's a bit old, but I want to read it. So as you could probably tell from the title, she is a vampire hunter. She kills the undead. It's not the dead. You can't kill the dead. She kills the undead, the ones that don't really know how to stick to the rules. But one day she is hired by one of the most powerful vampires in the city to solve a string of killings that's been going on. And at the same time, she's also incredibly attracted to this vampire. Would you call a vampire a man? She's very attracted to him. I don't know. Anyway, I think this is definitely like we're entering kind of like trashy vampire books, but they're my guilty pleasure, very fittingly. So like the Sugi's Deckhouse novels, for example, it kind of gives me the same vibe. And I both loved True Blood as a TV series. I loved it. Like I have rewatched it time and time again, but I've also read the novels and I thought they were hilarious. They're not amazing. They're just fun. It's a fun time. So I'm kind of expecting the same kind of vibe from both Guilty Pleasures but also Magic Bites, and that's why they're on this list. Then we have one that I've been told to read by some of you actually, and it's Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice. It's been mentioned a couple of times when I've been talking about actually really liking vampire books and also just vampires, because it's kind of like a vampire classic, a modern vampire classic if you will. But that said, I've watched the movie, so I should remember what it's about, but I watched it when I was very, very young and arguably should not have been watching the movie. I watched it with my mom. My parents just did not really care. Like, we can go through all the age inappropriate movies that I've watched as a kid and also as like a teenager. Some of you would be shocked. Interview with the Vampire is one of them, but I don't remember exactly what happens in it, and honestly, I'm actually glad that I don't, because I want to be surprised when reading the book at some point. That said though, I've decided not actually to look up on the synopsis for this, which is stupid because I should have done that for this video, but I'm being selfish with this one. So you can find a link to the book though in the description box if you want to read it, but all I remember is that there's a man who's sent out to do an interview with a vampire, and there's a whole thing, and it's very creepy as well. And there's some tension. That I remember tension. But anyway, Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice. Sorry I'm not giving you a synopsis or a summary, but we're being a little bit selfish today. I think there's actually also a series out recently based on the book too, which I'm definitely not going to watch until after I've read the book, but yes. So we got two more. One at least is also a bit of like a trashy vampire book, as I like to call it. That's not an insult from me, by the way, that's a compliment. And it's Halfway to the Grave. This is again a 2007 book. It's by Janine Frost, and there's something about vampire books from the zeros that they're definitely a guilty pleasure. In this one though, we follow a half vampire who is out in search of her father, who I'm assuming is a vampire, and then her mother is human, and she's out to basically get back at him because she thinks he ruined her mother's life. Unfortunately, or fortunately for her, while she's out searching for her father, she ends up in trouble with a bounty hunter who is a vampire, by the way. Or at least I think he's a vampire. There might be more supernatural creatures in this, so some of the characters that I'm mentioning might not be vampires, but I'm not really sure yet. But anyway, they end up entering a deal, a sort of partnership. So she ends up training with him. I don't know what for, but she ends up training with him, and he agrees to help her find her father. But while they're working on both training and also finding her father, they end up getting into trouble with a group of killers. And our lead girl finds herself in a bit of a hard place because whose side is she gonna take? The killers that I'm assuming are human, who technically she could side up with? Or is she actually leaning towards grouping up with the bounty hunter, the vampire, and help him instead? So that's what this book is about. I've been wanting to read this for like over half a decade, just to make it sound very extreme, but it's true. I've been wanting to read this since 2016. I just haven't gotten my hands on it yet, but I'll get to it one day. And the very last book on this list is not necessarily one that I think is written for me, but I want to give it a try anyway. It's called Magical Midlife Madness, and it's by K.F. Breene. So I have read 2 of K.F. Breene's books before. They were the first and the second book in the Deliciously Dark Fairy Tales series. And while they were leaning a little bit too much into erotica for my personal taste, I thought the writing style was fun, although not necessarily super fitting for this kind of fairy tale vibe, but I could see it fitting into a more urban setting. So I looked into some of her books and I found out that she had written this. And although it's not necessarily written for me because it is about middle-aged people, I want to give it a shot. So we follow a woman who has moved to a new city, or a town, I should call it. It's a small town. After her husband left her, he wanted something better than the life he had, so he just packed up and left, and her son has also left for college. And so she finds herself on her own, wants to start over, or kind of has to, and decides to take off to this small town. In this small town, she is taking care of a house that also comes with a very weird butler who gives some weird advice and stuff. He says some weird things now and then. I don't know what that's about, but I've gathered that he does. So he's there, and stuff is a little bit weird around her as well. And our lead woman kind of finds herself going on a bit of an adventure and starting over in a whole different kind of way than she first thought she was going to. So I'm gonna give this one a shot because I thought it sounded fun. But again, it's not necessarily written for me or my age group, I should say. However, willing to give it a shot. So anyway, those were the 14 books that I hope I included all of them, otherwise that's very awkward. But those are the 14 vampire books, or at least books with vampires in them, that I really want to read right now, but have not read any of yet. Again, if you want to see links to any of the books, you can find them to both Amazon but also Book Depository in the description box. And if you want to see more videos like this but with other supernatural creatures, or I don't know, something else, let me know in the comments. But that is all I got for you guys today. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, feel free to give it a thumbs up. And if you're new here and you want to stick around, I do content like this, but also TBR videos, wrap-up videos, readathons, bookish unboxings, book hauls, and all the booktube stuff. Definitely consider hitting the subscribe button. But I'm gonna leave you be for now. I've talked enough. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.